What's up guys, today we are going to be talking about two different build types when it comes to DPS in Guild Wars 2, those being condition damage builds and power damage builds, with some hot topics on why people might prefer one or the other when playing the game. I want to note that I will be focusing on a PvE perspective here. The distinction between power, Condi, and hybrid builds is more dramatic in a PvP or world vs world context. So for this video we will be specifically focusing on the PvE aspects in terms of open world and instance content. First things first, power builds. Power builds in Guild Wars 2 is what I recommend towards most new players, mostly because of its simplicity to gear, wide range of content that it is viable in, and the vast majority of power builds run a fairly simple gear and rune setup with Berserker's gear and Scholars or Dragon Hunter runes, with Relic of the Firework or Relic of the Thief, which are both available from the Relic chests that we get free from Soto. In addition to its ease of gearing, the vast majority of core and older game content is largely vulnerable to power damage. There still are terrain elements in dungeons and in the open world on occasion that do not stack conditions. Back in the day, people would run what is considered PvT gear to maximize the flat power damage, since these items are also unable to be crit. Full Berserker gear is essentially the same and it gives the same result, except with extra crit chance. The good thing about power focused builds is their ability to burst. What you see is what you get when you deal damage, and you can largely deal your 30k or higher opener over the course of a few seconds with no ramp up. This makes content that revolves around phases extremely susceptible and largely why you see a power damage fractal meta. There's typically large amounts of cleave with these builds, which makes dealing with trash painless and with builds being really fun to play. The downside is that power damage is susceptible to armor reductions, which is a combination of defense and toughness attributes. Additionally, protection also reduces the damage by 33%, so it's important to strip this condition from bosses that may have it. This is most commonly caused by the no pain, no gain effect from fractal instabilities at higher level fractals. Before I get into Condi damage, if you thought the first half was good, do me a solid and hit the subscribe button. Come on, just do it. It's literally free. Just do it. Now for condition damage. Condi damage or cDPS builds are an alternate DPS build. The primary upside is that there is no reduction on Condi damage from armor rating or from protection. Instead, its primary reduction is from the resolution buff. However, this buff is less common, but it also does get applied from the no pain, no gain instability as well. Condi damage builds are typically harder to gear, not necessarily in complexity, but available gearing, since the vast majority uses Viper's gear with runes of the Nightmare, runes of Tormenting, runes of the Crate, or any rune that has condition damage, expertise, and usually some form of condition percentage modifier. This gear set is an account bound set, and it has to be acquired through various vendors. The simplest way to get exotic Vipers is through the use of the world vs world vendor or use of another stat selectable armor type. There are many stat selectable items that can be used to acquire Viper's gear and Viper's trinkets. This stat set is also available in the Ascended malicious armor boxes that you get from in-game content. Condi damage is applied over time, with the balance currently allowing a fairly quick ramp up for most classes, making them fairly competitive with power builds. Many times these builds outshine power builds due to their ability to deal range damage, allowing the player to deal with mechanics of a boss like a spread or getting out of some goop while still being able to actively damage the boss. Power builds also exist with this ability, however they typically have less damage than their full melee counterparts. Most Condi meta specs have a variety of ways to strip boons built into their kit, which is useful when you do run into resolution. For example, Condi DPS Necromancer has a boon corrupt on their Scepter 3, which is able to remove resolution, whereas power builds like Power Soul Beast or Power Vindicator don't have any way of getting rid of protection. Regardless of the build that you decide to play or gear, knowing the right gear and runes to use will get you 90% of the way there. And knowing what bosses they specifically apply towards is the other part. Having a good setup for at least one power DPS build and one Condi DPS build will increase your ability to clear content by bringing the better option based on the encounter. Most builds can be accomplished by this same class and sometimes even by this same specialization. For instance, Berserker has a viable power DPS build and a viable Condi DPS build. Power Reaper is one of the easiest power DPS classes, and Condi Scourge is one of the best Condi DPS classes. Power Chronomancer is competitive for Mesmer, while Condi Virtuoso is one of my favorite builds. Soul Beast has a Condi Power and Hybrid variant, all available, and the Revenant has Power Vindicator and Condi Renegade. So regardless of the class that you choose to play, you will have an available power and Condi DPS build that you can try out for different fights. If you have made it this far, I'd like to thank you for watching. If you dig the content, consider dropping a like, leave a comment with any questions or clarifications on mistakes that I've made, and subscribe if you want to see more Guild Wars 2 content. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.